Hey everyone, Dr. Dan here again. So in the previous videos, we basically showed you how to get set up with a Java development environment. And then we downloaded the Hello Dr. Dan, the Hello World with Dr. Dan code from the GitHub repository. Basically all the code on this repository. And we basically showed you how to get that code up and running in Eclipse so you could actually run that Java code. So in this video, I want to kind of complete that process. If you look in the completed code that we had downloaded, you'll see that again there was this last module, module 8, which kind of has a transition to C++. And so by default, you will not be able to run C++ code in Eclipse. So there's a few things that you need to do. Just like in Java, you have to download the Eclipse environment as well as that Java development kit, which allowed you to actually do the compiling, so to speak, in Java. We'll have to do something similar. We'll have to download some special tools so that we can compile C++ code. And we won't need a whole new development environment. We'll keep Eclipse, but we will have to basically install an add-on to Eclipse so it kind of recognizes C++ and whatnot. So in order to do that, I will go ahead and we'll basically create our we'll create a new C++ program, and then I'll show you how to essentially get this the code that I'm kind of providing for you for free up and running, so you can play around with that at your own ease. So if you are on Windows, you will need to do two things. This first step will need to be done on Windows and Mac. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and Eclipse. I'm going to go ahead and open it, and I'm going to just choose some other directory. Maybe I'll even do a brand new one just to keep it clean. I'll go ahead in my code repositories and I'll create a new one, C++, and then I'll select that. So I'll go ahead and hit launch. That's going to create a whole new workspace for me, as you can see right there. And inside of that, what I'm going to do next is essentially if you go into the help directory, and you can do this, you don't have to create the new project to do this. Anywhere you're in Eclipse, if you have it open, really you just need to go up to help, and then you can go down to the Eclipse marketplace. This might take a second to load, but once it does load, you're gonna, in the find, you're just gonna type in CDT and hit enter. So that stands for C Development Tools. And you should see one, Eclipse C, C++, IDE, CDT, whatever version. If you have a newer version of Eclipse, you know, these numbers may look a little different. I've also seen this complete Eclipse. I would download the Eclipse C, C++, IDE, CDT. If that doesn't work, I think you can get away with this one as well. I've seen my students use this one as well. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do the Eclipse C++ IDE CDT. Click install. This is going to take a little bit of time. I would just make sure everything is clicked at all times. Click confirm. Go ahead and click yes to keep it going. One thing I would recommend is that if you have any kind of firewall or antivirus, if you're having trouble with this install, go ahead and disable those for a few minutes. I have seen that some of those firewalls and antivirus detectors or antivirus software can actually kind of cause this process to not complete. So you will have to accept the license agreement, click finish, and you'll notice that'll be basically downloading in the background. If you want to kind of see it, you can click on it. Okay, so that can take a while depending on your connection. I'll go ahead and pause while we wait. Okay, so literally right when I hit pause, it actually completed. You will need to restart Eclipse. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back into my C++ workspace. And I'll close that welcome page. Okay, so now what you should see is I don't actually want to create a new Java project. I want to create a project. And you should now see that there is a C++ in there. Okay. Now I'm not quite ready to go through with this because although I've installed the CDT into Eclipse, so Eclipse kind of has a vague idea what C++ is, so to speak, I need to actually install C++ onto my computer. So the next thing I need to do, if I am on Windows, okay, is open up a new browser, and you want to type in MinGW64. Okay, now before I even go there, let's talk about C++ compilers, because this is a good thing to have an understanding of. If I just type in C++ compilers, I'm sure there's probably popular compilers or something like this. I was hoping there would be a Wikipedia page. Here we go. Of different C++ compilers. Well, this isn't super helpful, but you can at least see a few. These are the popular C++ compilers. The ones that you're likely to experience, especially as a beginner, are Microsoft Visual C++. So if you happen to do C++ as an intro-level course or something like this, most definitely they're going to use Microsoft Visual C++. So actually download Microsoft Visual Studio, and that has its own version of C++ in it. The other next really popular one is what's called the GNU compiler collection. So GCC is what you typically hear of for that. GCC is super popular. If you're not using Microsoft's Visual C++, then you're almost assuredly using GCC unless you're off in some corporation and they have some specific workload or project that they have, going on there. But typically you're just going to use the GCC compiler. The problem with the GCC compiler is that it only is compatible with the Linux kernel. So basically it needs either Linux or Mac to run. So if you are on Windows, which is probably what you are if you're watching this, we need a different version of that, right? So if you actually go to MinGW, that's what we're going to download. MinGW, I just kind of searched through here. Yeah, there we go. Basically has a port of GCC, right? So ports just, it was converted from the Linux software to Windows. So that's what we're going to use. If you're on a Mac, then you probably already have GCC installed. If you don't, what you want to do to test that is just open up a terminal. Go to your Spotlight, open up a terminal. This is a CMD, but you literally just type in GCC and type in enter. Typically, if you have it installed, it will give you like this big error message, like you're not using it right. You can do like GCC-version or GCC-version, one of those two. I can't remember which one. Should spit out some numbers, 13.5.8 if you have it installed. If you don't have it installed, literally when you type GCC, it'll kind of take you through some prompts typically to install something called Xcode and kind of get it onto your machine. So you can just follow those prompts if you're on a Mac. But for the rest of us that are on Windows, we basically need to download this MinGW, which is the port of GCC. So what you want to do is in Google, just type in MinGW64 download. Okay, we'll do the 64-bit version. And we'll go ahead and just click on that first link and then click on the downloads button at the top, and then you're going to go all the way down till you'll see MinGW64 builds. So click on that link right there, and then this is going to be another link. You click on installation SourceForge, and after 5 seconds this will start downloading MinGW for our platform. Okay, so that's going to download an installer, so go ahead and run that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. And the version, you can just grab whatever the latest one is. Again, I'm going to do the 64-bit version, so I'm going to click on the one with the 64. Then everything else you can leave the same. So go ahead and click next. And I always typically change this. I would recommend changing the destination. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to do it in browse. I'm going to browse to this PC, the C drive, And then I'm actually going to, in my C drive over here, so if you open up your File Explorer, I'm going to create a new directory, MinGW64, and that way I can select that directory, MinGW64. So click OK, and then click Next, and then that is going to take a little bit of time to download all these files. And again, this is all the tools that you'll need to compile C++ code, to debug it, and everything in between. So I'll go ahead and pause while that's downloading, and we'll be right back. Okay, so just took about a minute or so. So I'll go ahead and finish that installer. And again, if you open up this directory now, MinGW, you'll see a ton of stuff in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is back in my Eclipse IDE, remember I was in the C++ directory. So if I go into my code repositories over here, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a project, and then I'm going to go over to C++ and click C++ project. Okay, make sure you don't click the one that says C/C++. You want to click C++ project, then click Next. Okay, so I'm going to give this project a name. I'll call it something like My First CPP Project. Okay, PP is just for plus. And what you want to do now is most likely you want to need to uncheck this box that says Show Project Types and Toolchains only if they are supported. Okay, so uncheck that, and then eventually if it wasn't showing before, you should see this executable directory. So you'll expand that, and then you'll go to the empty project. Okay, so if you are on Windows, then you want to go ahead and select the MinGW GCC. If you are on a Mac and GCC was installed, as we talked about earlier, you should be able to just click Mac OS X. Obviously, if you're on Linux, then you'll click Linux GCC. But for us on Windows, we're going to click MinGW GCC and then click Finish. Okay. Now, it's going to ask you if you want to basically change all these windows to kind of be a better environment for C++. So I do want that to happen. So click Remember My Decision and click Open Perspective. I always see my students, they never read that, and they just click no. They don't read it. It's actually very helpful to click Yes and Remember My Decision. So you'll see up here, you have a button for C++ and a button for Java. So you can kind of switch back and forth to change those perspectives there. So I'll keep it in the C version. And if I go over here, you'll see I have this project and there's nothing in it. If you look at the File Explorer, it has some Eclipse stuff in it, but there's no code in here whatsoever. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to now if you're on a Mac or Linux, you shouldn't need to do this step. Mac or Linux, just like I mentioned, GCC is integrated with those operating systems, so you don't typically need to do anything special. But if you're on Windows, what you want to do is right click on this project, go down to Properties, and then on the C++ build, you'll expand that and you'll click on the Environment tab. You should see a variable called MinGW_home. Go ahead and double click on that, and it'll give you a chance to put a value in there. At this point, what you want to do is you want to go over to your File Explorer, and you want to find that directory where you installed all of that software, that MinGW software. So for us, we had put it in the C drive, in MinGW64, and then there's another directory, MinGW64. What it's basically looking for is in this bin directory, it's looking for, you'll see GCC. Okay, so it basically wants the folder that has the bin directory, and it uses all this other stuff. But this is the main thing that it's looking for. So what you want to do is you basically want to come in and copy the directory. So just right click, copy, the one that has the bin folder in it. Not the bin directory itself, but the one that has the bin directory. And then you'll go ahead and you will paste that in there. And you click OK, and you'll hit Apply and Close. Now, if for some reason you just missed that step and you didn't install it in the C directory, most likely it's going to be in your program files. It'll be, you'll find MinGW in there, or in the program files x86, you'll find MinGW in there, and you can find it that way. Okay. So now you'll see as soon as I did that, it added all this other stuff, includes, you can kind of see that it seems like it's kind of recognizing it, right? So at this point, we can now go ahead and add our first code file in here. So right click, say new, and make sure you do a source file. Okay, source file, and I'll call this my first CPP program. Now a little bit different, in Java we never had to type .java, but in here I do need to give it a file extension, so I'm just going to call it .cpp for C++. So make sure you remember that part, because if you don't, I believe it might not compile correctly. So .cpp, and then click finish. Okay, so it gives us a file. Now I'm not really going to explain what I'm doing too much in here, because that's going to be for later tutorials, but it just kind of get this up and running with a simple program. I'm going to do a pound include iostream using namespace standard std, and then I will write my main, so int main open close parentheses open close curly brace, and then I will say cout, stands for console output, with the two less than signs, and we will say hello C++ world with Dr. Dan. Inline, end L. Now that's an L, not a 1. I see a lot of students miss that. That's a end L for inline, not end 1. Okay. So at this point, now what I need to do is with C++, I need to actually compile my code. So I want to come up here and hit the hammer, and you'll see it will do some things right there. It'll say build finished. If you look at the problems, there should be no problems. And now I should be able to come in over and run this program. Okay, now it says the selection cannot be launched, so glad this happened, because this often happens. It works about 50% of the time. If it does that, what you should need to do is right by the play button, you'll see a little black drop down arrow. Click that, and then do run as. Okay, run as is not actually showing anything. So I'm gonna just check two things. I may need to just restart Eclipse or my computer, but we'll go ahead and so it says nothing to build there. Go ahead and check that my properties are set up properly. It looks like it is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just restart Eclipse real quick. Okay, so go ahead and load this up again. So it's always a good idea to just kind of clean your solution space. If you actually go into C++, we'll see that there's a debug folder, and I actually see a program here, so should be able to run that. But if you go ahead and you click on your project and then clean, it'll delete all the kind of old compile files. And I'll go ahead and just try it again. So hit the compile, and then I'll try it again. Run as, let's see. Maybe I need to say run configurations, new, run. There we go. I don't know why that was so difficult, but if you rewind, you'll basically see that all I did was I said run configurations, and I had this C++ application, and I just clicked the new button, and it kind of figured out everything from there because I had the file open. Typically, that's not that challenging, but I'm glad it was, because that kind of shows you how to do it if it is a little bit more challenging. But typically, if the play button doesn't work in and of itself, you can usually do a drop down and then say run as local C++, and it'll kind of grab it that way. Now, something I want to show you is that you can actually have two C++ programs with mains in them. So if I actually go ahead and try to do another source file, and I say my second CPP project, or I guess I should say program.cpp. Okay, and I'm literally going to just copy this code and then paste it. So hello C++ world again with Dr. Dan. What you'll see is that when I play this, it gives me an error. Okay, so you'll see right here it says, hey, multiple definitions of main. Same thing should come up in the problems. Okay, so what I need to do in that case is I can go and just comment out the old main. So if I do a /* at the beginning and then a * there, then I should now be able to come and compile the second program and then play it, and then now we have Hello C++ World again with Dr. Dan. Okay, so that was a bit of a long intro, but we do have C++ now installed and properly working on our computer and within the context of the Eclipse development environment. So the last thing I want to do is basically show you how to get the C++ programs up and running for the completed code that you'll find on the Hello World with Dr. Dan course through the GitHub. Okay, so again, we had earlier, if I go back to my workspace and I go to my Hello Dr. Dan completed code, again, if you don't recognize any of this stuff, then just go back and watch the earlier video where we did the installation of Git and got all of this code. In the earlier video, we had basically got the completed code and started to create new projects for Java, right? And we were able to run that Java code there. So what I want to do now is get this last module working, the C++ code. Now that we have all the C++ tools installed, similar process, I'm going to right click, I'm going to say new, instead of Java project, I'll say new project, and then I'll click on the C++, make sure you click on C++ project, click next. And again, I'm going to call this, make sure I have the same name as this folder. So it's always best to kind of copy it and paste it. So I'll go ahead and paste it in there. And again, you'll know you got the right thing when it gives you this little warning that the directory already exists. So again, uncheck the show project types, click on executable, empty project, and then whatever operating system you're on, Mac, Linux, or if you're on Windows, MinGW. So then you'll click finish. Remember my decision, open perspective. Okay, and then you'll see just a little bit of a different structure here. I have some source and headers, but we'll need to do the same thing in Windows where we right click and associate. We go to properties, we go to the C++ build and the environment, and we'll need to go to that MinGW home value. Let me just show you what happens if you forget to do this. What's going to happen is when I try to, let me close all these folders here, all these files. I'll go ahead and get the first lesson, C++ Basics. You'll see it just opens up with a ton of errors. So if I try to compile, you'll see it just doesn't even recognize. It says where's G++, where's GCC. It doesn't recognize it. You can see the error basically shows you the same thing, GCC not in the path. So again, that's why I need to right click on the C++ project, go down to properties, C++ environment, MinGW home, and in that value, you'll need to go up to wherever you had that MinGW folder with the bin in it. And you'll paste that, apply and close. Now I should be able to build. Okay. Now it's building, you'll see it's doing some different stuff and it's giving me some errors. If I kind of look through the errors, you'll see that same problem, multiple definitions of main. Okay, so the problem here is I have basically 4 different files which all have mains in them. So what you're going to need to do if you want to test out any of these is you're going to need to go and just comment out all the mains. So what you can do is, in lesson 4, burrito client, okay, I'll just go ahead and do the / at the beginning and at the end. And I'll save that file, and then I'll do the same thing here in lesson 3, and however many lessons, if there's ever any more lessons than these 4, you want to just do the same thing. You just go out and comment out basically all the code, especially the mains in there. Okay, now with that in place, I should be able to build. And this time you'll see it says build finished. And now hopefully I can just run this. So you can see, please tell me your first, last name. Welcome, Dan Grissom. Let's learn some basic C++. Okay, so now you can see that this program is running as you would expected. So with that, you should be able to go through all the different GitHub code for the, Java and now C++ as well. So again, I would encourage you, feel free to check out the code through the repository if you want to kind of do the self-learning. If you do want a more in-depth experience where you can actually code alongside of me, then please do go ahead and check out Hello World with Dr. Dan. It's hellodrdan.com. You can sign up for those courses, or if you get this early on and they're still not existent, you can sign up for the email list. All right, guys, hopefully that helps get you started. Thanks a lot.